It just has to be right up there, Pezza, as one of India's greatest ever wins, and it must rank in the top 3 wins that they've had in their last 4 or 5 tests played in Australia. And from an Australian perspective, thank God that's over. Here's Big Basket now.
This is Baba Now, and this is BB Now. Matlab Big Basket Now, delivering in 10 minutes.
Pezza, that is, let's just get into the first of the 3 things. We're going to get some Indian reaction on Twitter a little bit later on in the show. But first of the 3 things is that was an embarrassment from Australia. I mean, Australia were humiliated, which feels one level up from embarrassment. But at the very least, that was about as bad as it could get. And I don't know if we should focus on that or if we should focus on how great an achievement, again, that feels like for Indian cricket in Australia.
And maybe we should hand it to the fans, he goes. What do you want? Do you want Australians crying about themselves, or do you want Australians sucking you off? And I appreciate that some people enjoy sucking off and crying at the same time. So
yep.
It's not one or the other. Life isn't black or white. That's what the Border Gavaskar Trophy is all about. Look, Australia was bullied. Australia was terrorised. Australia was dog-walked by India, he goes. And I'd like to hand it to India first. 3-0 loss to New Zealand at home. They suffered the kind of indignity that Australia has suffered now, except theirs was an actual series loss at home to literally New Zealand. Australia's not there yet, but we're in the same boat. We're in the same theme. And that they've managed to bounce back so stirringly from such a crushing, humiliating defeat should be a source of interest to Australia, really. How did India raise themselves psychologically from that defeat to produce such a famous win? Not least without their captain, he goes. So and to me, that's actually the issue facing Australia. Now that they've suffered this loss where they've looked, tired, fatigued, underprepared, and the question is, do they maintain their measured, steady, metronomic approach, steady as she goes, or will Australia flex into, a different combination to throw? Does this Australian team even do wounded pride? He goes, or are they too well adjusted? To bounce back? Are they too emotionally intelligent, Australia, to bounce back? Do they even do wounded pride? Are they at too high a level emotionally? We're going to find that out in the next couple of days.
The equivalent from an Australian perspective would be if they had just lost to the blind team 3-0 and then gone to India and outspun Ashwin and Jadeja in the first test match in indoor or something like that. That is the equivalent. Of course, New Zealand being the blind team in this scenario. I want to see Australia go off their medication for a couple of days. I think it's all running just a little bit too stable. I want to see what happens when they're off their Ritalin for sort of 3-4 days. What happens then? What happens if they start drinking creaming soda at lunchtimes? What happens if they have too much sugar in the diet? What happens then? Because at the moment, it's all just a little bit you know what? We'll just put this to one side. We're going to park this to one side. We're going to focus on what we can control the controllables. I say fuck that. Let's go on a chemical experiment phase, and let's see what it does to the brain. Let's see what it does to the chest. Let's see what it does to the lats. Okay, these are options available to Australia. These are just some thoughts initially.
No, fair. Yeah, you're calling for clenbuterol. That's. I totally agree, and I think that's our right. He goes, this team can have a certain style that has enabled them to win a World Test Championship. It's enabled them to win a World Cup against the odds, and it's the same style that helped them even when they were, they lost 2 games at the start of that World Cup, and we said, they're facing the cliff, they're at the edge, and then they just continued on, and they ended up winning. And now that they've lost 1 game, we're calling for all of that to be thrown out the window. You
Yes.
know, and for the Ritalin to be put away, you know, Garden State style. This is, in fact, are they under control from, you know, the injections provided by the government during COVID? You know, like these are the sorts of questions we're going to be asking over the next 10 days. And I very much welcome a lot of the commentary that's going to come in. And I welcome then the counterfactual from Australia, which will be, let's develop a siege mentality because everybody's writing them off. You know, a wise person might say, look, underprepared guys have another crack. They've earned the right of reply, but that wouldn't be fun. That doesn't sell papers. It doesn't sell column inches. It doesn't get clicks online. It's baby with bathwater.
Yeah, baby bathwater. Put the kitchen sink in. Let that sink in. And also, can we call RFK Jr.? I know he's busy, but that's not till like January. So let's get that going now before the Adelaide Test match. What are his thoughts on injecting like bleach or just generally questioning the system? Because the system has fucking let us down, Pezza, okay? Yep. The system sucks. I'm now right-wing nutjob stuff. Now, let's move on with the show and talk about the In 10. Big Basket's now Big 10, where in fact you can actually probably get a kitchen sink. There were people on Patreon suggesting you can get all sorts of things to, you know, sort of cleanse the brain, cleanse the mind, cleanse the soul post this hard 295 run loss here in Australia. But you can get microwaves, you can get hard drives, you can get batteries, you can get smartwatches, you can get laptops all to your door in 10 minutes thanks to Big Basket now. Now, Pez, overnight Josh Hazlewoods, when he was asked by a reporter, how do you approach tomorrow? Tomorrow, of course, now being today. What happens tonight and what do you do tomorrow to try and turn it around? Here's what the elite bush horse said. He said, you probably have to ask one of the batters that question. I'm sort of relaxing and trying to get a bit of physio and a bit of treatment, and I'm probably looking mostly towards the next test and what plans we can do against these batters. I guess the batters are just sticking to what they do, their preparation. They'll have a hit in the morning and talk around plans of what happened in the first innings, how they can negate that and move forward and improve on that. Now, this has been picked up by numerous commentators in Australia and perhaps for Star in India as well. And they're thinking, well, is there a divide in the side? Now, first and foremost, here's the divide in the side. Here's what the team's thinking. Can we get Josh Hazlewoods out of press conferences? Because it was about 3 months ago when he basically suggested that Australia were going to throw a game against Scotland in the World Cup. And I think the team were like, cheers, Josh, we'll clean that up later for you. So my takeaway is get the bush horse a salt lick, get him out of the way of press conferences and let the boys play, okay? Let him get another haircut. He's looking fantastic. He bowled brilliantly. I don't think there's anything in this. I just think Josh Hazlewoods is very good at certain things and leave him away from press conferences. You know? Thoughts?
I think there are a few things in it, but it's not the things people are talking about. So I listened to the comments. I thought they were completely fine. And I think people are going looking for a divide that doesn't exist with what Hazlewoods said in public. But that's disappointing to me because I hope there is a divide because there should be a divide. You know, this is what we're calling for. Like, you know, if this was RFK stuff, there would be a divide. Hazlewoods, it would be entitled to be calling out a divide in the team. And in fact, quite like personally between them, maybe there is a divide. You know, all the bowlers and a couple of the other guys are mates, and then you know a couple of the Ritalin boys up top are doing their own thing. Not really
Ritalin brothers.
The Ritalin brothers up top aren't really doing much. I call for more of a divide. You know, a divide means we're feeling something. A divide means there's heart and there's passion, there's energy. You know, leaving a foot in, do your job, Roy Keane stuff. Who is the Roy Keane of Australian cricket? I shudder to think, to be honest. But,
I might just smash into someone to make myself feel better.
Because you know, this is, you know, like. Andrew McDonald and Pat Cummins and the rest of the guys they've you know when it's all said and done in Australian cricket, the subtle emotionally intelligent revolution that they have perpetrated following, you know, at least 5 to 6 decades of just pure hostility and nastiness culminating in sandpaper is like nothing short of phenomenal and extraordinary. But now that we've been terrorized under Perth, WA skies, I don't want measured calmness anymore. You know, it's time for something different. And I'd like to think that Cummins coming in as the night watchman was some kind of hint of that. It was either that or him going, oh, I wouldn't mind a gig batting 3 for Australia, or at least having that on my stat pad. But yeah, like, you know, I wanted Hazlewoods to go harder on it, really. I want him to go, yeah, any fucking danger. Now you're asking me to comment on the batting, of which I did my fair share when I should be getting some physio. Any danger of the boys just helping in some way, shape, or form. So I want more from Hazlewood, if anything.
Let's move on to the next thing, and that Travis Head offers something for Australia. He scored 89 runs pretty briskly off maybe something like about 100 balls. Mitch Marsh did okay, and Alex Carey chipped in as well, I suppose. But that's where we're basically at in this game. We're chipping in with sort of celebrating 36 runs in a test match in a fourth innings. But Travis Head did offer something. I always feel like with Travis Head, especially when he was facing Bumrah, it's a real high wire act, isn't it? Like it's so it feels low percentage, though he's got himself in such a run of form the last couple of years in red cake and white cake cricket that he's executing more often than he's not. And, I said yesterday that someone needed to score 100, and then I realised that no one needs to do anything. And maybe actually the fact that he hasn't scored 100 means that he might score 100 later in the series, because really batters only have so many hundreds they can hand out per series. So I'm kind of glad he fell short, but I'm also kind of glad that Bumrah just under-bowled himself and then just like, okay, enough's enough, I'm going to bowl now, and then we all knew what was going to happen next. So, look, from an Australian perspective, there's basically nothing to celebrate in every single facet. Fielding unders, bowling okay first innings, but overall unders, batting just nearly laughable. It was something for the eyeballs, but did it do anything for you, I guess is my question to you, Pezza?
It did. Firstly, when Head's on, it's nice to watch. But it did insofar as it reminded me and comforted me that there is an Australian player who can play cricket with the bat. Because just for about 72 hours, it was like, holy shit, is this possibly the worst batting group in terms of age profile and form that we've seen for quite a while. Just for a couple of days, it was I felt like the entire nation was out of form and not knowing where its next run was coming from. Seriously, from what we were seeing, every single player looked like the worst guy that had played for Australia, and to the point where, and we'll cover this more in the main pod tomorrow, but James Brayshaw is up there in the comm box saying these guys not only need to get back to grade cricket, we're talking 2s and 3s. He's literally said second grade and third grade. And, so the fact that Travis Head could score runs against the Indian team just comforted me that I'm someone does know how to score runs. But beyond that, it's slim old pickings. Here goes.
Yeah.
The old dump truck's tired.
Let's get into the last thing, and that is 11 days until Adelaide. I know that the nation wants sweeping changes. As we mentioned, baby out with bathwater stuff. Again, you can get all those things at Big Basket. Now, I'm not sure about the baby. You might have to ask them. But I think that comes from a stalk, actually, now I think about it. Anyway, everyone wants the whole 11 changed, essentially. Can we resurrect Bradman? Is Benno available? These are the big questions facing Australian cricket at the moment. But it does feel a little bit too soon for everything. It's just that both of these teams before this game started felt like whoever lost, and if there was a big dramatic loss, that there'd be absolute panic stations. They'd go to a station and then they'd panic. There'd be panic rooms erected across Mumbai through to Sydney, depending who underperformed in this test match. And it just turns out that Australia have literally fallen on their own faces. They've been hoisted by their own petard in this test match, and the petard being pace and bounce and wickets that we want to play on. So what's actually going to happen is they'll play the same side, because it feels just a bit too soon to make dramatic changes, though. They lose the toss and then they have to face Bumrah at 8:30 p.m. in Adelaide with a pink ball, and then they lose the series, and then then they lose the match again, and then it's like, should have made a change. So it's at the very least an interesting one.
Yeah, I think I think they're probably going to keep the same team, and I think that a couple of guys get another shot, but they're on notice. That's probably that's the measured answer that they'll probably go with. They'll probably take the view that like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, that, you know, it won't be as difficult as that from here on in, and, you know, that perhaps the wounded pride will express itself in some way. Yeah, I'd be surprised if they didn't need to consider a few different combinations for the rest of the series, though. You know, I think India are going to do enough damage to force that. It looks like vultures are circling around Marnus. He's the one they're picking that needs to go. I'm not seeing a major difference between him and Steve Smith, except one's 35. But apparently Smith found his hands again and his eyes, so and did better in the last decade. But you know, just a shout out to India for this game as well. I mean, could you scarcely ask for a better performance 1-11? Like, if you actually go through it, Jaiswal 100, KL Rahul first innings and second innings. Devdutt Padikkal deliberately did nothing to get Rohit back into the side, so that was genius from him. You know, Virat Kohli scores 100. Rishabh is the difference in the first innings. Dhruv Jurel takes a good catch and also provides a route back for Shubman Gill. Washi's also route back stuff for Jadu or Ashwin. Nitish Kumar Reddy establishes himself as a test player with bat and ball. He'll be great under, you know, with the pink ball and with the blade destructive. Harshit Rana, you know, at least sledges and bowls wheels and knocks guys in the head just before we finish, and got himself in the game. Mohammad Siraj is his favourite place to bowl, and then the baddest ass and baddest booty in world cricket, Jasprit Bumrah, who is a god amongst men, and frankly, like, I think heaps of shit is going to be said about what happened in this test match, and whatever is said, I bet it still won't attribute a high enough proportion of influence to Jasprit Bumrah in this game. Not only did he make the decisive contributions with the ball when they mattered, but all of the compound effects of that on when Australians needed to bat, that it was all done in the fading light, that every time he came on to bowl, you knew that he was going to have an impact, including with Travis Head today, and it was Alex Carey in the first innings. There was all those little contributions beyond just those, you know, rip-snorting, vulgar spells of bowling in the eyes of Australians under fading light, and the impact that's going to have on their confidence for the rest of the series is immeasurable. Not just the guys who are currently in the Australian team, but probably the guys in Sheffield Shield who might get called in thinking, nah, I'll be happy to kick off my test career next series. Thanks. So, you know, I just don't have enough praise for Jasprit Bumrah. Just you know, not only that impact that I talk about, but what about the confidence that gives the batters as well? You know, so yeah, it's just flowers and hats off and pants off and booties galore for Jasprit Bumrah.
And that does make it 3-1 in the Anzac India series. Okay, hashtag AskTGC. You know, I put the call out there, and this really is a time for Indians to celebrate and just get in the faces. You know, this is the trade-off. If you've enjoyed TGC's coverage throughout the Test match, why not click subscribe and get behind TGC? There's still 4 big Test matches to go. We'll be at the ground. We'll also be doing side mounts later in the series, getting your reaction from outside the ground. So much to look forward to. Here's one that hurt early doors. I'm just reading this, Pezza, from Muskan saying, is it too early to say that BGT is becoming a one-sided affair? That I got to say, that one stinks. But Mark does reply saying, Jaiswal outplaying a cross-bat shot in the second innings will be able to cope with the extra bounce here. So that's a good point. We'll have to wait and see.
Gallows.
Yeah.
We're in the gallows already.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, James also said, I can't wait for the summer of cricket to start on the 6th of December. That's also true. Looking forward to that.
It was always the BGT was always a 4-test series anyway. Happy to give you one to kick off.
Yeah, that's right. Lots of questions about Australia rebuilding their batting lineup. A lot of conversation around Marnus. Saptarshi Paul said, will Australia give Rohit Sharma a debut in Adelaide? Something to think about. I'm not sure if he's got any heritage. Can we play Shikhar Dhawan? Melbourne's own. Well, he used to be anyway. There's a soggy biscuit question in here, but Stephen signs it off by saying, "Is this the loss Australia had to have? Are we in that kind of territory, Pezza? Is this the loss Australia needed to have to push forward? It's a real wake up call."
It is easily the most generous explanation you could give the Australian side. I think there was so much in this game to be cause for, like ripping the heads off and feasting on the goo inside. But yeah, sure. Loss we had to have. Now the boys are going to start to try and wake up and play. And I look forward to that. But they got to get rid of that Ritalin first.
We'll be back on the channel tomorrow for a full-length weekly episode podcast where Glenn Maxwell is joining us in studio. So much to talk about. Hopefully you've enjoyed our quick wrap of what happened in the first night of the mega auction overnight. Lots happening at TGC. So again, click subscribe if you haven't already. Please do like the video, share it around amongst your friends, and we'll be back tomorrow. But it's 11 long days for Australia to get back out there and start the summer, despite losing a hell of a lot of games so far in the summer of cricket in Australia. That one is tough. 295 runs. Fuck me.
Crikey, Moses.
See you later.